All right, and welcome back to First Team Fantasy. We're going to start it off here with the afternoon games, take it all the way through the Monday games and individual episodes like we have been. And we're going to start it off here with the Steelers heading into Los Angeles and upsetting the Rams. I mean, this is another game where we saw Matt Stafford unable to really do anything. They tried to kind of establish the run, didn't, they weren't unsuccessful. But there's just a lot of situations where, it seemed like they should have been passing and they weren't. Matt Stafford only threw the ball 29 times, which for him against the Steelers defense, which I don't know, hasn't been good against the pass. It was just surprising to see. He's 14 for 29, 231 yards, one rushing attempt for 8 yards, a touchdown, an interception, finished with 13 points. At this point, it's hard to say that Matt Stafford is startable because even in, great matchups against Arizona, he didn't do anything. Now against Pittsburgh, he didn't do anything. It's hard to recommend starting him. I mean, he's an option. He's not going to necessarily burn you, get you below 10 points, but we haven't seen him on the level that we would like to, especially after getting Cooper Kupp back. We saw Darrell Henderson get most of the work in this backfield. He got 39 snaps to Royce Freeman's 29, which wasn't too much of a surprise. This is a guy we've seen on this team, able to perform before. Henderson had 18 attempts for 61 yards and a touchdown, caught one of two passes for 5 yards, gave you 13.6 PPR points in a week where, it could have been one of four guys. They had 4 running backs on the active roster. It was him and Royce Freeman who ended up getting the work. Royce Freeman got 12 attempts for 66 yards. That was it. So he finished with 6.6 fantasy points. Not terrible. I mean, obviously the guy moving forward until Kyron Williams comes back is going to be Darrell Henderson. So if you were able to pick him up last week, then good for you. You now have a running back for the next 3. Tyler Higbee, again, is just out there running cardio for the most part, out there for 90% of the snaps, 61. And he caught 1 pass on 3 targets for 7 yards, only giving you 1.7 PPR points. At this point, Higbee's not a viable option. All of the passing work in this offense goes to Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And lo and behold, if you happen to throw Tutu Atwell in on a spot start, you got a 31-yard touchdown. He got 2 targets, caught one of them for that touchdown, gave you 10.1 PPR points. So, I mean, moving forward, this is what Tutu Atwell is, a purely boom or bust flex option, nothing more. I think he could be rostered for that reason. If you ever need to throw him in on any given week, he's shown that he's good for, a long pass or 2 down the field. Something similar to Rashid Shaheed, but with less volume. Puka Nacua heard my take that it was not 1A, 1B, and that it was a very clearly defined 1 and 2. And he out-targeted Cooper Kupp in this match. And he got 12, caught 8 of them for 154, 23.4 PPR points. He was dominant. I think Puka Nacua, obviously, high-end wide receiver 2, if not, in the wide receiver 1 category. Still, he is currently the wide receiver 4 on the year. This is what this offense is going to be at this point. They're going to try to establish the run. They're going to pass to Puka. They're going to pass to Cooper. Cooper Kupp had some uncharacteristic drops in this game. It was surprising to see the first 2 passes to him were right off of his hands. And that was just the start for a bad day for him. He only caught 2 passes for 29 yards, had a 2-point conversion, which boosted him a little bit, gave you 6.9 PPR points. Had a Cooper Kupp. I mean, any receiver is going to have their down days. So you can't look at this one, any sort of urgency or concern. It's just, you move on to the next week. It's still Cooper Kupp. Nothing to worry about or see here. It's just a bad game. Moving on to this. Oh, do you have anything to add to the Rams side of the ball?
Yeah, just that. I mean, and we'd talked about Zach Evans, the running back. He went from 4% rostered to 46% rostered, and we had our reservations about him, and they were correct. He did not play an offensive snap. He played 4 snaps on the special teams. That's it. So if you picked up Zach Evans, I am sorry. That was a big whiff. And
Yeah, that was a burn of a lot of fab.
and
I mean,
Puka at this point, I know we talked about, have we seen his complete ceiling, which we probably still have. He's not going to continue getting what he got in the first couple weeks.
he'll never get another game with like 20 targets. That's ridiculous.
But
It's just
he
not
is
gonna.
not a guy. I would not trade Puka. Puka is going to get volume every single week. He's going to get you, on average, I'd say like 15 points average, whether he's higher or below that. I mean, this game we saw, that he can out-target Cooper. He can be the number one on a week. And I don't think this is the last week he'll be the number one. I just think Puka's value he's astronomical. He's a just crazy talent.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're seeing that that's what this offense is.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of 3 things: throwing the ball to Puka, throwing the ball to Cooper, or running.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So moving on to the Steelers side of the ball. I mean, I don't really know what to say because their defense carries for them a lot. TJ Watt had an interception that set them up for a short Kenny Pickett touchdown. I mean, Jaylen Warren did have a nice run for a touchdown. Najee had a touchdown in this one. I mean, Kenny Pickett, you're never going to start anyways. He had one of the funniest stat lines of the year. 17 for 25, 230 yards. That's, not bad, not too great. It's about what you're going to get from Kenny Pickett. Rushed the ball 8 times for 0 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 fumbles. The Kenny Pickett experience. It's just unbelievable. Najee, 14 for 53 and a touchdown. He did lose a fumble, which was fortunately recovered by his teammates. 3 catches for 15 yards. I mean, something that we weren't seeing out of Najee. He actually got more targets and receptions than Jaylen Warren in this one, something we haven't been seeing. I can't say I have ultimate confidence in Najee moving forward, but,
No.
he had 14 rush attempts to Jaylen Warren's 6, 3 targets to Jaylen Warren's 2. He had 7 more snaps. It's a little bit more separation, which as a Najee owner, you would like to see because Jaylen Warren's kind of been looming as to whether he's going to take over that backfield or not. And just a week like this kind of shows that no, he is not going to take it over. There will still be a split, but Najee will still be the main guy. And it's kind of like a Gus Edwards and Justice Hill situation. I think Najee is the guy you probably at this point would prefer to have. But Jaylen Warren still does offer a flex-worthy, range of outcomes every week.
Yeah.
He had 6 rushes for 32 yards and a touchdown, 1 catch for -1 yard, giving you 10.1 PPR points. Najee had 15.8, easily his best day of the year. With Freiermuth out and on IR, it's going to be Connor Hayward for the Steelers, not really Washington. Hayward played 86% of the snaps, caught 2 of 3 passes for 23 yards. Not necessarily someone I'm interested in, but I mean, he's there. He's off by. If you're absolutely desperate, then whatever. George Pickens, again, proves that a bad matchup does not make a difference. He caught 5 of 8 passes for 107 yards, giving you 15.7 PPR points. At this point, I mean, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't start George Pickens week in, week out. We see what he's capable of. His catch, ability is unreal. He can, he can't get much separation, but it doesn't seem to matter half the time because he can go up and make contested catches like it's second nature for him. So, I mean, he's a guy that 90% of the snaps. His snaps aren't necessarily going to go down with Deontay Johnson coming back, nor do I think his targets will. I think it's just going to funnel through Deontay and George Pickens. In his first game back, Deontay had 5 catches on 6 targets for 79 yards, 12.9 PPR points, only 66% of the snaps. That's clearly going to go up every week. But, I mean, hey, have a day, Deontay. First game back. Everybody who started him waited for him to come off of IR. Not the best day, but for his first game back, I mean, that's better than you see from a lot of players.
Yeah.
And then Calvin Austin's kind of the guy that got worked out of the wide receiver room. Allen Robinson's still out there for 64% of the snaps. Obviously not somebody that I'm interested in. He only got 1 catch on 1 target for 7 yards. But the Calvin Austin hype is over. He's a punt returner, and that's about it at this point. And he'll come in on special packages to do jet sweeps and whatnot. But the only options you're interested in this offense are Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Najee and Jalen Warren. And I'm not jumping to start Najee every week. If you have better options, I'd look at them. But as we continue to talk about and more running, Jerome Ford just went down. People are getting hurt every week. So if you have a guy like Najee, you're running out of options for the most part. And when you look at the waiver wire, there's not necessarily too many guys that I'm like, oh yeah, I'd just pick him up off the wire and start him over Najee. Not really, because we know for a fact Najee's going to at least get like 10 carries a game. What he does with them, I don't know, but there's some volume compared to the unknown. Yeah. So that's all I got for this one. If you have anything to add to the Steelers.
I like George Pickens and Deontay every single week. Something about Jalen Warren and Najee to think about is so far Jalen Warren has 60 fantasy points on the season. Najee has 49. Jalen Warren has 4 weeks with double digits. Najee has 2. This past week being his best fantasy week with 15. It was both of their first touchdown of the season. I think Jalen Warren is a safer play. He's like a bit lower tier of a Michael Thomas for the running back. Jalen Warren's going to get you like 8 to 10 points. He's not going to burn you and get like 3. He's also not going to get 20. Najee has a chance to have a higher ceiling, but on a more consistent basis will burn you more than Jalen Warren.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
That'll be all for this one. Got a few more afternoon games, and then we'll wrap up everything else, including the waiver wire, in one big episode. So stay tuned, guys, and we will be back.
Sir.